I am Tamar from TLD Media, and basically all this video is going to be is me babbling on about the music that is typically used in a thriller film and my feelings on this topic, why I think that they use them and what effect I think that they have on the audience. Yeah, if you want to go get yourself a cup of tea or coffee, whatever you prefer really. Just get yourself a nice beverage, go get yourself some food really, because it could take a long while. So the films that I researched into, there were 7 of them, were Pulp Fiction, Dark Knight Rises, Inception, Heat, Goodfellas and Seven. I'm sorry, my maths is really bad. I'm at the 6 films that I researched into. Oh, you can't get worse than that. Brilliant. Foundation maths coming through right there. Yeah, so the reason that I chose these films was because I feel that they've got good music in them really. All the bits that I watched, they've got good thriller type music. So that's really why I chose them, and they're quite good films. As directors of these films, give yourself a pat on the back. You've got yourself a fan. Okay, I watched the opening of all 6 of these films and then wrote notes on the music really. That's what I did. Simple as. Now basically, I'm going to tell you, lucky, what I found out. Might take a while. Like I said before, might get yourself a biscuit. A good bourbon. Bourbon and a digestive. Sit yourself down comfortably and I'll begin. What I found out is that all of the films, music at the start is generally what sets the tone for the rest of the film, if you get my gist. So like with Pulp Fiction, the music was really fast paced, had a good beat to it, had gunshots in it as well, which, you know, kind of makes it quite obvious what the film's going to be. Have a lot of it in, and yeah, it was a fast-paced song, and I felt that it showed to the audience who were watching it was going to be a fast-paced and energetic film that will be very enjoyable for them to watch, because it's not going to be a boring film where you fall asleep through it. It's going to be a fast-paced film like the songs that they are using. The music in Pulp Fiction, like I've already said about 1,000 times, was really fast paced and set the tone of it, but that was, I felt it was quite different to what the other 5 films used, because in my opinion they all use quite slow dramatic songs. Quite a few of them were like orchestral and like classical, that sort of give off a like, they had tension, so like you're like, oh, wonder what's going to happen. One of the things I found out while I was doing my research was that in most of them, in fact in all of the films, opening credits, titles, all of the music that was used had a really definite beat to it. So like with The Dark Knight Rises, it almost sounded like there was a heartbeat in the background, which of course will kind of, I don't know, plays with your mind a little bit, because like, is it music? Is it actually a heartbeat? What's going on? But yeah, so it's sort of like makes you question what you're actually listening to, so you don't know what's really happening. Like, even though it's just the opening credits, you're still kind of wondering, like, because of the music, you're still left wondering what's happening, or what, in fact, what's gonna happen in the next scene that you see. Because It could be something to do with the music, it could be something completely different. You don't know until you get into the film. And I think that sort of, I don't know, it just sort of adds sort of like adds like tension and atmosphere to like the audience, because it's like, if you've got a definite beat going on, and of course if that sounds like a heartbeat, it's going to match probably in time to your heartbeat, so you're going to feel like you're part of the film. It sort of like includes the audience and adds atmosphere really, because if you hear, like if you watch a film and there's a definite beat in the background, you know quite possibly something scary or something mysterious is going to happen, and it's going to leave you wondering what the hell just happened. So yeah, I think the fact that all of these films used a definite beat, like The Dark Knight Rises did, because it will leave the audience questioning what's going to happen next, and adds the right kind of atmosphere to the film. So like I said with The Dark Knight Rises, it adds sort of tension, because it sounds like a heartbeat, so you don't know if someone's died or dying, or if it's something just completely different really. So it adds tension to it, and just sort of like completely like gets in your head really, because you're like, oh no, I wonder what's happening. But yeah, like gets in your head because you don't know what's happening, and it just adds adds tension. And you can, like when you're sat, like when I went to cinema to see Dark Knight Rises, you're sat in the cinema, and just because of the beat, and obviously because it's so loud, you can just feel the tension in the room, because none of you know what's happening, like unless they've seen it before, like you don't know what's happening. But even then you get so lost in the moment because of how like loud and prominent the beat is. It just adds like that complete, like the right tension. So obviously filmmakers like of Dark Knight Rises knew what they were bloody doing, or knew what they were doing. Thumbs up. Again, another film that uses a beat is Seven. That I think they used a beat for the same reason that Dark Knight Rises used a beat. They didn't use the same beat, but the beat was quite prominent, and it came in after a little while, so which I think in fact works even better than having it right from the start, because if you've got a beat that's sort of like, you don't hear it at the start and then gradually crescendos, adds tension as well, like even more than straight from the beginning, because it increases the tempo of the music slowly. So in fact you find that your heart's beating quite a bit, because you don't know what's going to happen. And if you hear a crescendo, you think it's going to be a loud bang. So it does add tension. Like even though it's just the opening credits, it adds a lot of tension to the film, which is the same as well with Rises, apart from there wasn't a crescendo and it was there right from the beginning. But it does sort of crescendo. It Dark Knight Rises crescendos as well, right at the end of it actually. Which again, you're going to be like, oh, what's happening? Another thing that I found out was that quite a lot of the thriller films use classical music, because it's slow and it's quiet, and it does use a lot of crescendos, which, as I just babbled on about, are good. So like classical music, like you've got like all the different instruments, and it's quite noisy but quiet at the same time, which Seven used to their advantage, as the film feels like also very good. This fades out to the waves, because the next scene has got like the beach, and I don't know if you've seen it, but if you've seen it, you know what I mean. If you haven't, watch it and see for yourself. It fades out to waves because the next scene is a beach scene, but I'm not going on about that, I'm going on about music, so I'll go back to the classical music. I don't know what the other word for crescendo is. So it is the opposite of a crescendo. Before that, it stays at a steady volume, and it's at the same volume the whole way through until it fades out, which I think is good because it leaves you to focus on the titles. You can see what what's going to happen, and I think it's probably the least confusing part of the film, really, because I don't know if you, like, as I've said, I don't know if you've watched the film. If you haven't, I don't know if you've heard about it, but I'm pretty sure you have, because there was a lot of talk about it when it first came out in 2010. I think it came out in 2010. It is probably one of the most confusing films I have ever seen, and I've seen a lot of films, big yourself up, and it doesn't take a lot to confuse me, but seriously, it's confusing. Like, I'm not going to say anything because I don't want to ruin it if you want to watch it, but it is seriously really, really confusing. Honestly, it's confusing. So having just the steady pace of music completely calms you down and puts you into a little zen mode before you just hit with confusion after confusion after confusion. Only like after a few weeks later, after watching the film, that you do actually realise what the hell was actually going on. So calming music sort of lulls you into a false sense of security about what's actually going to happen in the film, which is a lot different to what The Dark Knight Rises does, where it sets you up for what the film is actually going to be like, which I think personally is a good thing, because it makes you appreciate the film even more than you would have done if, like The Dark Knight Rises does, the music sets you up for it. Goodfellas is also a lot different to what the other five have done with their music. Goodfellas uses, you don't hear the music at the start straight away, you hear cars and background noise, and it's sort of as if you're standing on the streets, like anywhere, in the city, anywhere, and you just hear cars going by, and then slowly, it's not even slowly, it's literally there's suddenly music. It's as if someone has literally just turned the radio on and the song is midway through. Obviously the song isn't midway through because that would sound really weird, but not that I'm saying that it's suddenly starting is weird, just if it suddenly started halfway through it would be weird. Anyway, so yeah, with the music for Goodfellas, it starts really, really suddenly, and it kind of makes you jump a little bit because you're like, oh, you didn't expect that at all, like from what it was before. And the music is a jazzy kind of music, like that you'd hear in, like, when was jazz? Was jazz the 60s? I think jazz is the 60s. I'm not very good in, like, music knowledge and time knowledge, but I think it was the 60s. It's the sort of music you'd hear when you go to, like, you know, the people who wore, like, the little, like, the girls that wore the dangly dresses and then, like, them kind of people. What are they called? They've got a certain name, I can't remember. But it's that kind of music you hear if you go to a place where you see them, really. Goodfellas is out of the 6 the only one that I watched that had a voiceover, which I know technically isn't music, but I'm just going to speak about it anyway because it's sound and it was in the opening credits, so you know. You're going to have to like it or lump it, really. Either way, you're going to have to listen to me. The voiceover, I can't remember it word for word, but it's obviously explaining what sort of setting the scene for the film, and you can kind of tell what it's going to be about. If you haven't watched the film before, and I have to admit, I did only watch the opening 2 minutes and I have not watched the rest of Goodfellas, but from what I've seen in the opening titles, credits, whatever you want to call them, it is a film that I personally would want to watch. It sort of gives off the vibe of like a mafia film. I don't want to say that it is a mafia film because personally I don't know and I don't want to look like a complete and utter idiot, but from the voiceover and the music, it does give off the vibe of a mafia film, which if it is a mafia film, I'm sure it was kind of what directors, editors, producers, script writers, probably not them, were trying to get at with the opening titles. Which of course is a good thing, because hopefully it is a mafia film. I'm praying it is actually a mafia film, because I'm going to feel really stupid if it's not. Hoping and praying that it's going to be as good as the music sort of connoted to you that it's going to do. So the final film that I am going to be talking about now is Heat, which also uses really slow music, and I would say it's classical, but I don't think it is like classical, get me like all like the orchestra and everything, but it is really, no, it's not classical at all. It is really high pitched, which I think, because it's so slow and so high pitched, I think that it also adds tension, just like the proper classical music does, like I said for Inception, and like I said for Seven actually. Did I say that for Seven? I said that for Seven. If I didn't say that for Seven, I meant to say it for Seven. Little disclaimer here, the camera that I have just been using for the rest of the video has literally just died. Not died completely, but completely drained a battery, and it's Lewis' camera, so I don't actually have the charger here with me. And so yeah, basically if the background's changed and the quality of this video has changed, it's basically because I'm having to now use my phone instead of the camera. So hope you can bear with the probably really bad quality of my phone. But yeah, okay. The last film that I'm going to be talking about now is Heat, and it is the music that they use is a lot different in some aspects, but again in other aspects it is quite similar to the other films that I've been talking about really. The way that it's different is that it's got really slow, high-pitched music, whereas the others, obviously there was the classical music, but it wasn't as high-pitched or as slow. And obviously, again, like I've said earlier, like with Pulp Fiction, it was really fast-paced music, and then with The Dark Knight Rises, it was just that really heavy beat really, which was again obviously a lot deeper and a lot faster than the music that is used in Heat, which I think because it's so slow and so high pitched and it starts right from the beginning, it does add, like all the other music has really, it's added tension for the rest of the film, so the audience know what they're going to be feeling for the rest of the film. If you remember, to a few minutes, seconds, I don't know how long I just talked for, ago, I said that it was a lot different in some aspects, but in some aspects it was the same. The way it's the same, it's not the same to all the films, it's the same to one film, and that film that it's the sort of the same to, or similar to, is Goodfellas, where Goodfellas has got a voiceover, and at the start you hear the cars going. Basically, he doesn't have a voiceover, but it's got trains going in the background. Even while the music's playing, it's got trains going on in the background. Quite quietly, but still noticeable. Which I think personally gives the audience something else to focus on. Not to focus completely on, but something else that they've got to fit their head around as to why it's there. Because obviously, hope I'm not spoiling it for you if you haven't seen Heat, but the start of Heat is in a train station. That's all I'm saying. So obviously, you're going to expect to see trains. In this film, you do hear the trains like you would do in Goodfellas, but it's also, if Heat, or this music and this setting was in any of the other films, like Inception or Seven, Dark Knight Rises, and Pulp Fiction, you probably wouldn't have heard the trains, but you would have seen them. But in this film, the director, the filmmaker, we'll go with filmmaker, the filmmaker has decided for you to see and hear the trains whilst the music is still playing. So it does give you something else, or does give the audience something else to listen to, work out what it's to do with the film, etc. Which I think is a good thing, personally. Like I said earlier, the music at the start of Heat, like basically it starts right at the beginning, which is unlike Goodfellas, that's where it starts not halfway through, but halfway through really. So yeah, it starts at the beginning, which I think it does help to add the tension, but personally there's no other way that I can think of why they'd want to put music right at the start rather than halfway through. And also, like Inception, actually, the music in Heat carries on at the same volume all the way through, and it doesn't, like, obviously it fades out like Inception does really, so it's quite a lot similar to Inception in that aspect, like it's the same as Goodfellas with the noises aspect. So basically, from doing my research, I have worked out really that a lot of the thriller films, like in the industry, with a few exceptions like Inception, use music that is going to set you up for the rest of the film. Like, and I think the best example from the films that I have been researching into is Dark Knight Rises, because it's such a heavy beat, and it's like, what did I say? It was like a heartbeat. It just sets you up completely for what the rest of the film's going to be like. Really like fast paced and just really mysterious, really. And a lot of thriller films do that because it's going to make the audience want to watch the film more if you've got music that connects to the story and to what's going to happen in the film, and if they were to put music at the start that was just completely random, it was going to have people going home or finishing the film, however they've been watching it, just looking at each other like, right, I get the film, but what the hell was that at the start? Because they don't understand that why they've put a really happy, jolly film, like a really happy, jolly song at the start of a film that has loads of action and killing and mafia and a thriller type film, really. You just wouldn't expect it and you wouldn't understand it. If it connected in some sort of way, then yeah, it would be good and it would be different. But if it didn't and it was just a random, really happy, jolly song, right, that faded into a really quite violent film, then you would be left feeling a bit like, alright, okay. It's just going to make you think that the filmmakers don't really know what they're doing, really. But by putting music that does fit in with the film, it's going to show people that, one, the filmmakers know what they're doing because they picked a good song, and two, it's going to set them up for the rest of the film and excite them for the rest of the film and make them want to watch it, really. It's not going to make them want to get up out of their seat and just leave the cinema, switch film, take a DVD out the DVD player, get their money back from Blockbusters. I don't know, I don't think Blockbusters exists anymore. Or turn off the film on Netflix and pick another film or another good TV series. Because you can do it either on Netflix. So yeah, that is the good thing. And even Inception, even though it is a lot like it is the most least confusing part of the film, it's still a good music choice for the film, really, because it, like I said earlier, it lowers you into a false sense of security. It still makes you want to watch the film because it's not so different to the film that you're like, alright, brilliant, that was really good. And it's not like Dark Knight Rises, like I've said earlier, it's not really different to the film. It's still to do with the film, but it's not as to do with the film as some of the other films that I've chosen music is. if that makes any sense. I hope you understand me. I have babbled a bit really. So yeah, that is what I found out, and that is my conclusion on my research. I hope you've enjoyed my video. I'm sorry it's probably really long, and I hope you helped yourself to more than one bourbon and more than one digestive, because I know I would have if I was sat here watching me really, especially with me babbling on, because I do tend to talk a lot. So yeah, and I hope this video has made sense, because if it hasn't, I'm terribly sorry, and you can just forget you've ever watched it really. But yeah, that's me done, and I hope you enjoyed it, and you'll see me again in another TLD video really. Bye! An upbeat, funky jam.